Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Rising. I have switched coffee out for tea, and we have another great show planned for everyone today. Ryan, what's on the agenda?
Well, Max Alvarez and Brett Lloyd are with us to discuss Kroger's decision to end its $2 an hour hazard pay raise while the company spent over $1 billion on stock buybacks. And Brianna Joy Gray weighs in on Biden's call on Democrats to ditch the filibuster in an effort to pass voting rights legislation. But
first, Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Anthony Fauci had some pretty heated exchanges yesterday during a hearing before the Senate's health panel on the federal response to COVID variants. First, Senator Paul questioned Fauci over emails, which were obtained through FOIA via The Intercept and BuzzFeed. These emails show while top experts suspected COVID had been engineered, Fauci may have had a hand in shutting down any lab origin discussions. Let's watch.
Do you really think it's appropriate to use your $420,000 salary to attack scientists that disagree with you?
Senator, the email you're referring to was an email of Dr. Collins to me. If you look at the email
that you responded to and hurried up and said, I can do it. We got something in Wired magazine.
No. I think in usual fashion, Senator, you are distorting everything about me.
Did you ever object to Dr. Collins' characterization of them as fringe? Did you write back to Dr. Collins and say, no, they're not fringe, they're esteemed scientists, and it would be beneath me
I did not
do that? You responded to him that you would do it, and you immediately got an article in Wired, and you sent it back to him and said, hey, look, I've got him. I nailed him in Wired of all scientific publications.
That's not what went on. There you go again. You just do the same thing every hearing.
That was your response. And this wasn't the only time. So your desire to take down people...
You're absolutely incorrect. As usual, Senator, you are incorrect almost everything you said.
Well, no, you deny, but the emails tell the truth of this.
No. So the proximal origin letter published in Nature Medicine is one of the main points of discussion in the middle of this exchange. So the authors of that letter that went to Nature exhibited almost overnight changes in judgment, saying, quote, our analysis clearly shows that SARS-CoV-2 is not a laboratory construct or a purposefully manipulated virus. Rand Paul then pressed Fauci over the scientist's sudden change of heart.
Peter Daszak, who you communicated with privately, and other members of the scientific community that wrote opinion pieces for Nature. 5 of them signed a paper for Nature, an opinion piece. 17 signed a paper that called it conspiracy theory, the idea that the virus could have originated in the lab. Do you think words like conspiracy theory should be in a scientific paper?
Senator, I never used that word when I was referring to it. You're distorting virtually everything.
Did you communicate with the 5 scientists who wrote the opinion piece in Nature where they were describing, there's no way this could have come from the lab?
That was not me. What I did.
Did you talk with any of those scientists privately?
You keep distorting the truth. It is stunning.
So Fauci doesn't respond really to any of those questions.
No, he's leaning on this this constant claim that Rand Paul is distorting him as usual. He's just sort of using retorts. It's as his defense. He's not getting into the substance at all. Granted, Rand Paul kept jumping in, but even when he had the opportunity, Dr. Fauci didn't defend himself really on the merits very well or very effectively. I think probably because he can't.
Right. There are no good answers from Fauci's perspective to those questions. Like the question, did you communicate with the people who wrote that letter in Nature? Yes, we know about the conference call. We know about email exchanges. Did you use conspiracy theory? Well, okay, maybe he didn't, that we know of. Francis Collins put it in the subject line of his email to Fauci, and then Fauci replied, as you mentioned yesterday, these are just shiny objects, ignore them. They'll go away.
Yep.
So for Fauci to now say that he never called it a conspiracy theory is disingenuous at the very best. And so I think that's right. That's why he just goes back into almost a culture war response of saying, like, you're team crazy people, and I'm team rationality.
Yes, no, he's team science. He is science itself. He's science embodied. And no, I don't think Fauci emerges from any of these exchanges looking particularly good, because I think he doesn't have an idea. He's not willing to admit that the public is no longer sort of buying it. And he actually has the burden of proof on him when this information comes out to explain and to sort of get into that, be humble. But he comes across as just really smug. And I think that's because he doesn't want to engage on the substance, it doesn't look good for him. So he's just sort of deflecting. Now, scientific advisor at MIT and Harvard, Alina Chan, says an addendum to the proximal origin letter published in Nature is long overdue following private meetings with Western leaders and the change to their first draft. Chan cited the mostly redacted Fauci emails as the source that shut down discussion of a lab leak, adding that even the WHO held up data related to the origins of the virus. All this comes, of course, during the time that the mainstream media had branded the lab leak as a conspiracy theory that only whack jobs or Trump supporters would believe. Ryan, I think when we were having this conversation yesterday, you pivoted to a really important point, which is that the actual issue with all of this is that it's the hypocrisy, it's the lying, it's all of that. But it's also the point that we could have another pandemic.
Right.
Like, the reason we need to know about the lab leak theory, the reason that we have to have information about it is because we haven't earned a break from pandemics. This could happen again. And if we are not willing to be honest about these things, then we could have another situation like this on our hands, potentially, if that's what happened.
Right. This research is dangerous. And Fauci had been under pressure before the pandemic to put a stop to this research. There had been a pause on this research. Emails released yesterday around Daszak and Daszak, I forget how you say his name, or not that I forget, I've never really understood how you say his name, but the guy who runs EcoHealth Alliance that was getting NIH money to do the work in the Wuhan lab, emails emerged that said, hey, let's not send all of this information up to the WHO, because this was information that came out of the research that has been paused. And it would be really bad for us and really bad for science if we release this information at this point. And so the cover-up at that point is making it harder for the scientific community broadly to respond.
Right.
Because you need all of the different information. And I'll have more detail on this in my radar, but the immediate response of the NIH experts that Fauci and Collins spoke with on that February 1st phone call was, this looks like it came out of a lab. And it looks like it came out of the lab that we were funding.
Right.
And here are the reasons why it looks like that. And then they put their thoughts in a paper that comes to Fauci and Collins 4 days later. We mostly don't know what Fauci's response was, though we have one that I'll get into. And then the paper comes out in a way that is then used to say, well, there was no. They couldn't have come out of a lab, and here's why.
Right.
And all of the arguments for why it could have, which the scientists were saying, I'm 70-30, that this is lab. And another one was like, I'm 60-40. This guy over here, I'm 50-50 lab. Everybody thought it was quite plausible that it came out of a lab. Nobody actually came up with any theory that was remotely persuasive to them that it could have come from nature. Like they're like, here are the coincidences that would have to line up. And they would have to line up such that there was transmission among humans in like October that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And so far we haven't really discovered that.
Right.
Like they've been looking further back, but it looks like it's much tighter, which is the thing that they needed for any of their implausible scenarios to be even remotely possible, and that doesn't seem to be there.
Yeah, if you're not willing to engage in open inquiry because it's politically inconvenient, well,
harmony.
Right, international harmony, lives are on the line. I mean, that's the bottom line, and it doesn't bode well, I think, for the future that we still can't sort of get to the bottom of this in our own government. Right,
and Fauci's response clearly is to just make this a dogfight. So during one tense moment, Fauci was caught on a hot mic blasting Senator Roger Marshall.
You are totally incorrect.
Well, we look forward to reviewing it. Senator Marshall, Dr. Fauci has answered you. It is public information, and he's happy to give it to you if you would ask. Senator Moran.
What a moron. Jesus Christ.
And that's pretty representative of kind of how Fauci's been handling this. And a lot of his defenders will say he's right. They are morons.
Right.
Like that is the appropriate response there.
And I think that's the climate in which Fauci is acting in, right? Like he takes, he's in this sort of legacy media bubble where he is constantly being treated as a very serious and very credible person still. You know, he'll go on with Chuck Todd or whomever on MSNBC and CNN, he'll talk to the Washington Post, and he's still treated very seriously and without due skepticism by a lot of those voices in legacy media. So I think Dr. Fauci really believes he still has the American people in his corner, and that what they see when he's going up against these evil Republicans is Dr. Fauci against, the MAGA mob, and everybody's like cheering him on, and everybody wants him to get in these little retorts when he doesn't realize he's actually lost the public, and it's a really bad look to retort with all of these in this, like you're saying, a dogfight. Not making this a dogfight is not good for him right now because it's time for him to engage on the substance, and he may find that engaging on the substance would have been the thing, even though he doesn't have a great defense, that would save him in the Biden administration. That's what I'm curious going forward is, does he become so problematic for the Biden administration that at some point even they ask him to resign?
That's a good question, but it goes back to the polarized nature of it. Like I don't know how much of a hit he's taking among hardcore Democrats. Right. Now, he's getting up there. There's no reason that we have plenty of scientists and public health officials that could do that work. Like there's nothing that says that people in their 80s have to continue working the punishing schedules that people like him are putting in. Like he's putting in enormous amounts of time. Totally. And if Republicans get subpoena power by taking over the House or the Senate, then he might decide that, you know what, it's been a long, good career. Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, let's put a lid on the career for Dr.
Like go out on top, like Michael Jordan.
Yes. Well, except in this case, it wouldn't really be going out on top unless you are somebody.
Unless you're the Democrats.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Good point. Well, we will tell you what's on our radars next.